Luxus Dragneel.
Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today, let's speak about the other off-brand anime. This particular off-brand anime was different from other off-brand anime because it featured a horror scene and featured the character Hachishaku-Sama. With that said, let's get started right away. When the boy was having fun catching bugs, he heard someone say, "Ho," so he looked to see where the voice was coming from. He then saw a very tall woman walking inside her home, repeating the words, and when he stared at her, she abruptly stopped. The boy became alarmed when the woman did this, and the woman then suddenly turned to face him with a frightened expression. So the youngster became frightened when he spotted a woman who was much taller than any male in her village, and he started to run directly to her house. However, as he was running, the tall woman was only staring at him and claiming that she had fallen in love with the boy at first sight.
Later.
After that, when night fell, the boy enjoyed her food prepared by her grandmother. Her grandmother was delighted when he said that, and her grandfather told him to slow down because the food wouldn't go away. So, as they were eating, the boy tried to ask her grandfather some questions. The grandfather responded by asking what it is, so the boy responded that there might be some foreigners residing in this town. Following that, her grandfather tried to recollect, but it appeared that no foreigners lived here. He then asked the kid what was wrong and inquired as to if anything had happened to him. The youngster replied that he had seen a very tall and lovely woman going toward their home. In order to explain the woman he saw, the youngster stated that she was tall enough for him to be able to see his face in the wall. He also said that she kept repeating those phrases. When the boy was telling her grandparents what he had seen, they started to become alarmed, because they know what the boy saw. In response, her grandfather grabbed her and asked when he last saw that woman. Because he couldn't comprehend her grandfather, the latter said, "This afternoon," and at the same time, her grandma was praying. When he learned that the boy had seen that woman, her grandfather became frightened and claimed he needed to call for help. And while her grandfather was telling everything to the people, her grandmother was still praying for the boy, and she was still scared and worried for him, but the boy really didn't understand them, so Grandma told him about the woman he saw. That woman was Hachishaku-Sama.
Oh, hell no!
In order to reassure the youngster that he will be okay and to ensure that Hachishaku-Sama can't harm him, she told him everything about him and said that if anyone saw him, they would die. The boy had to remain in the room with several sealed containers and talismans. The window was covered by a box, and the room was also locked from top to bottom. Her grandfather also instructed him to remain there, but he also warned him to leave the room before that time. They won't speak to him until then. When the timer for 7 o'clock struck, he was instructed to leave alone. He was also instructed not to open the door no matter what. And when the voice of Hachishaku-Sama suddenly appeared, the boy was lying there contemplating what her grandfather had said while also worrying about what would happen to her if he were to be found by her. As a result, the kid became terrified when he heard that voice. Therefore, while he was in a panic, her grandfather called him to see if he was okay and to tell him what had happened. The youngster couldn't comprehend what her grandfather was saying at the time, so when his voice vanished suddenly, he became frightened and opened the door even though he had been told not to. The youngster was left wondering what had occurred when he opened the door, but while he stood there, it appeared like Hachishaku-Sama had entered because the door's seal had been broken by his action, and she had also greeted him with a good evening.
I don't like where this is going.
The youngster became even more terrified as a result of Hachishaku-Sama catching him and threatening to kill him.
5 hours later.
But when the incident was over, her grandfather discovered the child to be asleep due to Hachishaku-Sama, and so he made the decision to flee with the boy using a van to avoid being discovered by Hachishaku-Sama. They drove slowly to ensure that she would not notice them. And the two men who are guarding the child say that if he can leave the hamlet, he may be able to survive. They also warn the child to stay strong since they are on the verge of leaving the village. And boy was still weak from Hachishaku-Sama, but he seemed to want to see her again, so she called him. When the boy heard that, he immediately looked where the voice was coming from, but the man told him not to look, and he saw Hachishaku-Sama chasing them and pleading with him to stay and not leave him alone. While Hachishaku-Sama was still pursuing them, the boy suddenly apologized to him numerous times and started to cry, telling him that he had been told he couldn't be with him. Hearing that, Hachishaku-Sama was rendered speechless and began to cry as well, but the boy's guardian saw her fearful expression and said it was their fault. Well, that's it for today's video. I was pleasantly surprised when I watched it because, despite being off-brand, it had some scary scenes and a lovely main character. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to my channel.
Thanks for watching.